Congressman Richard Hanna joining us on the phone. Richard, how are you? Good morning.
Hey, I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys? I understand you're under a lot of assault by a snowstorm.
Yeah, well, it had to come at some point. I guess it wasn't a white Christmas this time around, but there's probably only, maybe 355 shopping days left till Christmas this time around? You getting ready?
Right. I'm thinking of Woods Valley and Old Forge and how important all of this snow is to their economy. So hopefully they can make up some of what they lost.
Yes, and some of the guys who obviously depend on the snow for snow plowing in their businesses, too. So.
Absolutely.
In fact, our own Jay is out in our parking lot right now at Roser Communications running in. He was shoveling and plowing our parking lot outside.
Oh, good.
How was Washington, D.C. last night, sir?
Interesting as always. It was. It's always a privilege to sit there and be able to listen to the State of the Union speech. It's as you can see, everybody is there, and security is everywhere. It went smoothly, and I was interested in virtually everything the president had to say. Didn't agree with a good deal of it. I think perception is always managed by politicians, but I thought that in as much as there are so many more people working now, unemployment rate is as low as it is. Who could argue that wages have gone up? They have not, and I think there's a lot of anxiety out there about the future of our country, particularly when you come from a place like New York. He talked about the dysfunction in government, the divisiveness between the parties. I thought that one of the points he made was exactly right, and that is that politicians have been in the business of picking their voters rather than voters picking their politicians. Gerrymandering is a huge problem. It was interesting to see him take a swipe at, although not by name, at Donald Trump and Ted Cruz.
Yep.
Cruz, of course, who made that statement about carpet bombing, and Trump, who has been so very much anti-immigration in so many different ways. And I think the president is a thoughtful guy. I'm not in a position to agree with him on many things because I'm close to it. I think a lot of people take a great exception to whether or not the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, has been successful. And then he talks about things like small business in our economy and how important it is. Yet, if you're here in D.C., what you see is thousands and thousands of pages and new rules promulgated to affect small business that make it harder for entrepreneurs to thrive. I do think that the president is an earnest guy. I believe that he believes what he says and does worry a lot about the middle class, worries about equality, and the only question is how do you change that dynamic in this country? Do you find victims and perpetrators, or do you find a way to lift everyone up? I believe one of the things I like is the fact that he did talk about universal pre-K, something I strongly believe in, even if it's not universal, but something that is so important to young people and parents to break intergenerational poverty. I think more than anything, though, what I agree with him about is how harsh our politics have become and how difficult it is to find common ground and work together. And there is so much opportunity for that, but we've become so divisive in our approach to one another. I'm not, but you see a lot of people who are, and it's simply not productive.
Yes, you've been a centrist politician. It's interesting. Donald Trump seems to be creating a rift in the Republican Party. Nikki Haley made a speech last night that was a bit controversial. And there was a piece in the New York Times over the weekend, Richard, about potential rifts in the Republican Party, breaking the party apart, or at least causing concern within the Republican Party.
Sure. You see that here. What people don't realize is that Ted Cruz, and I've said publicly I wouldn't support not that they care, but either Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. I have watched Ted Cruz. He was largely the instigator behind the government shutdown, which was so detrimental to the country, may have made a few extremists feel very comfortable and good about punishing politicians or having some kind of reaction to their disdain for government. But at the end of the day, it cost tens of billions of dollars to our economy. The 16 days it was shut down, people were paid their wages and often paid unemployment to boot. You can't make that stuff in the real world, and for my money, it's irresponsible, and I was one of a couple who voted against it. I don't regard myself as a centrist. I'm just a guy trying to get things done and trying to work with people to that end. And, we've had a very productive time here, and we'll have look forward to a productive next year.
Congressman Richard Hanna joining us at 100.7 FM WUTQ.
And Congressman, one of the things, as you pointed out, the president bringing up one of the few regrets in his presidency, that things between parties may be getting worse instead of better. So I found that interesting. But you brought up health care. I know that was something that he said, I guess we won't be agreeing on health care anytime soon. Do you see this being a factor coming up again this year?
Of course. One of the problems is the Republican Party hates Obamacare. I get that. There are certainly problems. There's been lots of executive orders to keep it alive and to make it functional. The difficulty in joining that kind of diatribe is the fact that we haven't come up with a real replacement. And right now there are some places, I'm not sure the number, but it's 12 to 18 million people who are taking advantage of the Affordable Health Care bill, and 26 states have expanded their Medicare, and it's become part of the fabric of our country. So I think that it's important because of that, and in fact that we do want people to have health care. Certainly you don't want them denied for pre-existing conditions and that type of thing. But the Republican Party really has the onus to come up with a thoughtful solution or program if they really want to get rid of it. And people talk about it, but I have yet to see a comprehensive plan in that regard.
And it did seem like the president brought up many different things that maybe he didn't get accomplished or didn't go well in his presidency, which I found interesting. But one of the things he did tout pretty heavily was national security. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's difficult to believe that our standing in the world is better than it was, not just because of him, but since 9/11. I think the engagements that we involved in Afghanistan and Iraq were not well thought through, and I certainly don't agree with our engagement in Iraq and Afghanistan is gone way beyond our original ideas of what we should be doing there. And you look around, and you don't want to be the world's policeman, but in many instances we are. And then when you look at something like in Syria, which is such a terrible state, the red line he drew, and it's difficult to imagine that the world is looking at us and saying that we are great leaders in terms of our ability to affect the world at large. That our standing is up rather than not up or down. And I'd question that. But a lot of these speeches and a lot of the commentary is about managing perception, and everybody has a different view of the world.
Yes, Ted Cruz wasn't in attendance. Kim Davis was, the Kentucky clerk who opposed gay marriage. Did you find any interesting admissions or subtractions with regard to the crowd in attendance there?
No. I mean, it's the same old thing. I sat over on the Democratic side. A bunch of us Republicans do, just to kind of change the dynamic of the audience.
Interesting.
You saw the scowls from the Republican side on different things, and the same on the, it works both ways. But the reality is that politics never really goes away, and people carry certain things on their sleeves. And for my money, there are times when we should just sit back and enjoy the idea that we have this wonderful democracy, that we have an opportunity to debate things openly and hopefully thoughtfully. And those are the things we need to protect in this country, the opportunity to drive towards solutions that show the diversity of our population. The reality is you scratch any American, you're going to find an immigrant. Some of the demagoguery about immigration these days is disturbing. And certainly we need secure borders, and nobody should be here illegally, and we should respect those people who come here through legal means, and we have every right to deport people who come here otherwise. But we have not done that, have we? I mean, we have not debated immigration openly on the floor in the 5 years that I've been here, and it's something I've pushed for. Another thing he mentioned was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is also becoming increasingly divisive. I would like to see it brought to the floor. I'd like to have it debated. It's an important part of our future, the ability to do trade with these, I think, 11 countries on the Pacific Rim area, and kind of get out in front of China and have an opportunity to talk about things like currency manipulation. But I don't see our side willing to bring that to the floor. I don't know. I would hope that happens.
Both great topics that you just brought up, and as we see this coming up again in the presidential campaign. So if that does come to the floor, kudos to you. But I have a question for you, Richard. Sitting on the other side, did you find yourself maybe nodding off and standing up and clapping with the Democrats for a second or two?
You know what? I follow my own star. You know, if I like what someone says, I'm perfectly comfortable. I didn't join it. You know, I came down here as an American citizen, taking advantage of this opportunity to serve the community I care about, and I will always be comfortable saying that I took a pledge to the Constitution, not the party. And if that's a crime, so be it. But I don't think it is. I think more people need to remember that we live in a very pluralistic world, that there are many competing interests, and the goal is peace. The goal is to move forward together so that everybody feels like they have opportunity. You know, we have a society that falls apart when people don't feel like they have a fair shot at their own future, their kids' future, their grandchildren's future, and I don't think anybody has all the solutions. I don't think Obama does. I don't think the Republican Party does. But I do believe that by and large, most members are deeply invested in building a better world. What we need to do is get over the notion that we're going to build that world completely in our image. And somebody like Kim Davis, who does not support gay marriage, being there, as you mentioned, sometimes the price of liberty and peace is the tolerance you give other people, your willingness to say, you know what, my freedom depends on theirs as much as theirs does mine. And sometimes you just have to accept things that you're uncomfortable with. And that's kind of the price you pay for your own freedom at times. And you see it a lot where people just aren't willing to give in on certain issues they feel strongly about, and I respect that. But sometimes it's important to just step back and look at the greater good and the greater goal.
Sure. And maybe staying here home, some of the domestic bullet points that the president brought up, minimum wage, as you mentioned, some of the immigration laws, stricter gun laws, but also tax credits for low and middle class income workers. I know he mentioned maybe a tax credit for someone who's out there working and doesn't have children.
That's right. He did mention that, and a lot of those good things that you're thinking of came through the omnibus bill, the tax extenders they call them. The earned income tax credit was extended. There are good things happening. Nobody likes the fact that we're almost $19 trillion in current account debt. That is a real problem, and it's a real risk to the future of everybody we meet in this country. It's we are borrowing against the next generation. But take, for example, the reality is that we're trying to squeeze 100% of the savings out of about 33% of the budget, those things that are discretionary, they would call them, but Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, those things that are just open-ended, where 10,000 people a day are signing up for those things. Those need to be provided. We need to keep our promises, but we simply can't afford to go forward with the most expensive healthcare system in the world, almost double many other countries. So there's opportunities to fix things, but not if politicians aren't willing to deal with them directly. You know, one of the profound things for me down here is I'm always amazed at how much members think of themselves as almost institutions unto themselves. They come here, they love the job, many of them, and they spend enormous amounts of time raising money. I think campaign finance reform is important. They spend enormous amount of time looking over their shoulder, looking at their base, saying, how is this group or that group going to come after me? Am I going to have a primary? Well, you know what? It's not about that. They ought to come down here and do it the old-fashioned way, serve a few terms, be who they need to be, show their character, show their depth, commit to things that they commit to, but also be willing to lose, to give up, to go home and let somebody else do this. Nobody's indispensable. And one of the problems with our politics, and the president referred to this, is and how divisive it is a function of people, small groups. For example, the far right or the far left. Both parties are guilty of it. With gerrymandering today, all you have to do is move further to the left or further to the right, and you wind up getting reelected because those people who show up in a primary support you. You don't get primaried, right? So, but I think we need to look at that. And frankly, one thing he did say that I absolutely agree with, everybody ought to get out and vote, because if you don't, you wind up ceding your party, if you belong to a party, to a small minority that may not agree with the vast majority. And everybody ought to take advantage of the opportunity to vote, if only to support people that they truly like or that they feel better about than the other guy. If you look around the country, there are places where you simply can't lose if you're in a D district or an R district. And it's caused a lot of divisiveness down here because people, like I said, are always afraid of a primary, afraid, looking over their shoulder, asking themselves, how is the Tea Party going to be engaged in this, or how is the far left going to be engaged in this?